Welcome friends! In this video, we're updating the tiny screen on my 2019 F150 Raptor in the Sync 3 system, and we're going to take it from this to this. So let's get wrenching. The system came double boxed and well protected inside. The screen and vents are in one solid piece. The box also has the side trim pieces, trim tools, the HVAC control trim, two harness pieces, the trailer control trim, and the module mounting brackets. The box did come with instructions, but the instructions were only for the disassembly and assembly of the control circuit boards when you transfer those from the old unit to the new unit. Upgrading your screen takes place in three major steps. Factory screen removal is step 1, control transfer is step 2, and the CARABC screen installation is that final major step. Factory screen removal requires a 7mm socket and ratchet and a set of trim tools. CARABC includes a pair of trim tools if you don't already have your own. First, I removed the center speaker trim. I used my fingers to remove it, but this can damage the trim because it's in two pieces, and the two pieces are plastic riveted together. So I recommend using a trim tool and getting all the way underneath the sides and not just the front. Then I used my 7mm socket and ratchet to loosen and remove the two 7mm screws holding down the center dash tray. Next, I used a trim tool to pry up and slide along the front of the tray to dislodge the three plastic trim clips holding down the front. I unplugged the speaker next by depressing the clip's retainer and pulling the female connector shell off of the speaker. The secondary wiring that you see here, it's just power wiring for my 45-watt PD charger that I had previously installed to power my phone charger. With the tray removed, I began loosening and removing the two screws securing the center dash trim using that same 7mm socket and ratchet. Once those screws were out, I was able to slide the trim tool down each side of the center dash trim, dislodging the trim clips on each side. Behind the face, I unclipped the trail control, hazard, and start-stop buttons by depressing the tab on the driver's side of the connector. On the bottom, I disconnected the climate control and radio control wiring by depressing the clips on the bottom of the passenger and driver's side clips. Next, I loosened and removed the 6 screws holding down the OEM screen using that same 7mm socket and ratchet. On the back side, I disconnected the upper blue connector by depressing the clip on the driver's side of that connector. Then the micro USB connector by depressing the clip on the top of that connector. The main wiring harness is removed by depressing the clip on the back of the connector and then rotating the lever to the passenger side. The center vent trim on either side is held in by the center console's center trim piece that goes around your shifter. To get that, I removed the center console passenger side trim by pulling out carefully to dislodge the plastic trim clips holding it on. The seat should be all the way to the rear for appropriate clearance. On the driver's side, I used a 7mm socket and ratchet to loosen and remove the screw holding on the front of that center console side trim. Once the screw is out, the trim can be removed just like the passenger side. Now to remove the center console's center trim, I lifted up the rear of the trim under the armrest using a trim tool to dislodge the plastic clips holding it down. Up higher, I could now use a trim tool to pull out the center vent trim on the passenger side. Once the trim clips were dislodged, I could slide the trim off the center console's center trim piece. I flipped the trim on its side to unclip the 12 volt and 120 volt outlet wiring. On the driver's side, I removed the vent trim from the center console trim, and then I unclipped the transfer case connector and the trailer controller. Now on to the second major step of transferring the OEM controls to the new screen. This step requires the use of a T10 Torx bit, a PH1 screwdriver, and also a PH2 screwdriver. It's important to note that this part has detailed instructions in the box, and it starts with removing 9 screws using a T10 Torx bit. Once the screws are out, the rear cover can be removed. Underneath, the next goal is removing the ribbon wiring by pulling the white clips out evenly on both sides and then carefully lifting the ribbon up and out. The ribbon actually has 2 little tabs which hold it in, so you have to be careful when lifting it up and not, make sure you don't rip it out. Now the upper control board for the radio can be removed using that same T10 Torx bit to pull out the 4 screws which hold it down. The controls themselves and lighting rings can be pulled out next. Onto the HVAC controls, I removed the 6 screws holding this down using that same Torx bit. Then I pulled out the control board, the controls, and the lighting rings. Finally, the trail control, hazards, and start-stop buttons can be pulled out of the top by depressing the clips on the sides and then pressing them out toward the front of the trim. Next, I needed to... Oh my goodness, look at that big old screen. It's huge! Anyway, I popped in the first 2 buttons into the new screen, and then I had to stop and I had to pull out a filler plate to get that last button in. On the back side, I got confused because this screen/system replaces only the radio controls with some generic buttons and filler plates. The new screen only gives you the track buttons and the play-pause button. I can speculate on this in another video and the peculiarities, but that'll be in a completely different video. Moving on, I went ahead and threw in the controls, though I had to be careful to make sure that everything was aligned properly before screwing down the control board. The box actually comes with new screws, which use either a PH1 or PH2, that's Phillips head, or cross tip if you're a guy, cool one each. The new trim requires 6 screws instead of the original 4. The HVAC trim is separated but assembled much like the radio controls. This took me a really long time for some reason. It was difficult getting everything to line up, including there's like little rubber plugs that run inside of the temperature dials, and the locating pins which run through the controls and then up through the control board. After faffing about for around 10 minutes, I was able to get the 8 new screws into the trim, which replaced the original 6 screws. Now I needed to connect the HVAC trim to the main screen. This is connected using 3 tiny screws and a PH1 screwdriver. I did not have fun with this. It required a substantial amount of pressure to tighten without stripping out the head. I tried multiple screwdriver sizes, like different types, and I confirmed that these were in fact PH1 screw heads. I just had to apply a lot of pressure and support from the bottom and then tighten them down. With that part snugged up, I reconnected the ribbon wiring, making sure it was fully seated, and pressed the clips forward evenly to lock it into place. The directions point out that the cover bracket is bare metal and it is sharp, so I had to apply some heat resistant tape to protect the ribbon wiring. I cut off a couple of pieces and then taped down the wiring. Then I installed the cover bracket, which already had loads of protective tape on it, but I did this using the PH2 screwdriver to tighten down the 6 screws holding it on. I struggled removing the power outlets, transfer case controls, and trailer controller from the OEM side trim. The outlet box is held in with 8 clips built into the housing, and I pressed them side to side to pop it out. The transfer case controls are held in with 3 clips built into the housing, which all need to be depressed at once. The trailer controller just has 2 clips built into the housing, but the top one is a little difficult to get to just because of the angle, so I had to use a pick to pop that one out. I installed the outlets and transfer case controls into the main head unit and moved on to the driver's side trim. This trim comes with a filler plate and a controller plate. These are installed using 3 included screws and a PH1 screwdriver. On the old screen, I popped off the blue connector holding on the wire, which connects the accessory protocol interface module, or APIM, to the screen. Then I unscrewed the 3 screws holding the APIM to the screen. The junky old screen gets tossed on the floor, but the APIM module that runs your Sync 3 system and a boatload of other processing for the vehicle, we need to hold on to that. This is mounted onto a new bracket using 3 shorter screws and a PH2 screwdriver. To prep everything for install, I opened up the harness bag and unwound the main screen wire, plugging it into the APIM. The male side of the lever connector plugs into the APIM, and the longer wire with the white connector will eventually plug into the new screen once everything's in the vehicle. Okay, so back on the truck, we now begin the third main step of the installation. First, I connected the micro USB plug, then the lever connector. I realized that I had the bracket upside down, so I flipped it over. Note that the notch in the bracket, which allows the start, stop, hazard, and trail control buttons to clear it, that will go upward. The new bracket only has 4 holes for screws, so I reused 4 of the original 6 screws to secure the APIM to the dash. Here you'll see me gently rubbing the underside of the bracket to test how sharp it is. It is definitely not smooth, but it's not super sharp either. I do recommend taping or sanding or filing this in advance. I had, of course, forgotten to connect the antenna wire, so I plugged that one in from the backside, and now I could actually install the screen for real. I plugged in the screen connector, then the white harness connector. Then I faffed about with the USB cable for a bit till I decided to just fold it up. But you should definitely keep this accessible for any updates in the future. Moving closer, I had to reconnect all of the wiring on this huge single trim piece to include the outlets, the transfer case controls, and all of the upper buttons. These wires, they're not long, so it was annoying but not difficult to reconnect them. The screen and trim fit very snug, but absolutely perfectly into the dash. I was really surprised by this. So it did take me a minute to get everything straight and lined up, and I did also end up knocking a clip nut off of the dash. And I had to run out and buy a new clip nut from O'Reilly Auto Parts. But I was able to tighten down the one screw that I had left using a 7mm socket. Putting the side trim on, I needed to first slide it back over the center console trim on both sides. Then I slid the 3 connected pieces forward until I could press in the side trim. I did find that I needed to snap the center console trim back down first before fully seating the side trim. These side trim pieces are also a very snug fit, so much so that I needed to hop over to the driver's side and apply a great deal of pressure on the inside there to get the trim clips to secure properly. Then I popped on the center console side trim pieces to include securing that one 7mm screw on the driver's side. Before I reinstalled the center dash tray, I did the big peel and I tested the screen. And it did not work properly. This is where being a man who doesn't read directions really gets me into trouble, because the last page of the directions do say that if the screen does not load properly, then to unplug the main harness from the APIM and plug it back in as many times as necessary to get it to load properly. Fortunately for me, after I went back in the garage and read that part, and then I walked back out to the truck, it was already working. So I installed the new nut clip from O'Reilly's and put the center dash tray back in. So, a couple of quick tips for installation. Number one, read the instructions in full before starting. I got really grumpy when the screen didn't work on the first startup, and I would have saved myself some stress if I had just read the instructions. Number two, keep track of your hardware. This includes the screws, clip nuts, and plastic trim clips. While making some modifications, I dropped 6 trim clips into the ether of the dash. And I also dropped one of those clip nuts. The clips weren't my fault, but I wish I had pulled off the trim clips to save myself a trip to O'Reilly Auto Parts. Luckily, the new screen box did have like 10 spare trim clips for me. Have patience, or just get an installer. This install was definitely delicate due to the requirement to transfer the controls, but it honestly wasn't that hard. If you don't have the confidence to do it or the patience, then find a local shop to just install it. They will likely be happy with how easy the install is with all of the plug-and-play wiring that goes into this. Anywho, that's all I've got. This is a promotional video since I received the screen in exchange for the install video, so that's great for me. But if you're looking to pick this up, you can use the Rough Wrenchin' promo code RW15 for 15% off of the screen, and I will pick up a commission at some point, I think. Not sure how that works. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.